Okay, today we're going to finish chapter 2. We're talking about proving geometric relationships, which essentially, like yesterday we did segment proofs. Today we're going to talk about proving like angle relationships. Okay, so most of it on geometric would be like supplementary angles, complementary angles, things like that. All right, so we're going to walk through just some of our postulates, things that we need to know first before we can start our proofs. Okay, which a lot of these things you guys are going to know because we've talked about them already. So the first one, a linear pair, which is a supplement theory. What do we know about two angles that form a linear pair? They're also called what? It's in the name.
Linear. Line?
Well, other than a linear pair, what else would we call them? Supplementary.
That's not in the name. Oh, you meant the name of
Oh,
you meant like
yeah.
linear. That's the title. I'll put a parentheses.
Okay, and what do we know about two things that are supplementary?
They equal one.
They equal 180.
If you do what with them?
Add.
Okay, so here, the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 is equal to 180 degrees. Now, similarly, the complement theorem, right, says if two angles form a right angle, then they would be called what? Complementary. So what kind of equation could we write for angle A and angle B?
Measure equals 90.
Good. The measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B is equal to 90 degrees. Right? Both of these things we've talked about, so we know those. Okay? We just haven't necessarily called it the complement theorem or the linear pair postulate. Okay? Congruent supplements theorem says that if two angles are supplementary, to the same or congruent angles, then they are also congruent. So, for example, if we know the measure of angle 1 plus the measure of angle 2 equals what?
Measure
180.
180, right? Because those two are supplementary. What other two angles are supplementary here? So the measure of angle 2 plus the measure of angle 3 also equal 180. Then which two angles here have to be congruent?
1 and 3.
1 and 3, right? Because angle 2 has to be the same here. Sorry. Right? If they both have angle 2, then that has to be the same angle. So then we know that the measure of angle 1... What's this doing this to me? Hold on. We know that the measure of angle 1... Or sorry, not the measure, but just angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. Which, what other reason would we know that here? Because they're vertical angles. Okay. Messed it up altogether. All right. Next, the congruent complements theorem says that if two angles are complementary to the same, then they are congruent. So here we know the measure of angle A plus the measure of angle B are both equal to 90. Then we also know the measure of angle C plus the measure of angle A are equal to 90. So then which two angles here would be congruent? C and B. So angle C is congruent to angle B. All right. Vertical angle congruence theorem. We already know this one. What do we know about vertical angles? Vertical angles are always congruent. Okay, what are my two congruent pairs here?
1, 3, 2, 4.
So angle 1 is congruent to angle 3, and angle 2 is congruent to angle 4. Okay, and then last one should be obvious to us. All right angles have to be congruent. And perpendicular lines form right angles. So we know angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. Okay? All right. We're just going to identify a postular theorem at the bottom based off the ones we just talked about. So example 1 says, if angle 3 and angle 4 form a linear pair, then we know the two added together are equal to 180.
The supplement theory.
Yeah, we're just going to name one of the postulates that we just talked about above. So it's going to be one of these 6 that we just talked about. So which one says that if two angles form a linear pair, then you add them together and set them equal to 180? Linear pair postulate.
I just said. Yeah, it's the same thing.
It is not the same thing.
It's in the same box.
I thought you said congruent supplement. Did you not?
Not that supplement.
Oh. My fault.
I mean, it means the same thing, right? The supplement
So
two
that
and
worksheet-
the linear pairs.
Do what?
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is our worksheet, like, is it gonna be over the bottom or the top as you get over those?
Well, the bottom part is just asking you questions to identify what we went over on the top.
Oh,
So yeah, it'll have some of both. Okay, example 2. If angle 3 is congruent to angle 4 and angle 4 is congruent to angle 5, then we know 3 is congruent to 5. Where have we seen this before? But where have we seen this before? Maybe not today.
Transitive.
Yeah, what is it?
Huh?
What is it, Austin?
Transitive.
Transitive property of, yes. Well, it doesn't mean we're not going to have other ones still thrown in here. Okay. Example 3. If the measure of angle 3 plus the measure of angle 4 equals 180, the measure of angle 4 and the measure of angle 5 equal 180, then we know 3 is congruent to 5. So
Congruent supplement theory.
these two were the same. Said the last two were congruent. So yes, congruent supplement theorem. And you can abbreviate those as well.
Is the way we know that because like they have it set equal to 180 and example 2 doesn't have it set to like 180 or 90?
Correct. Yeah. Now, example 4 is similar. What's the only difference on example 4? It's equal to 90, so it's the congruent complement theorem. Okay, and then what theorem or postulate says if you have two right angles, then they are congruent to each other?
Right angle theorem.
Right angle theorem. Okay. All right, we're going to go through a couple proofs. I probably am not going to do all... I'm probably not going to do all of these. I'm probably going to pick one or two and walk through them. Okay, so we have time to just kind of practice some of these. Okay, so on page 2, let's do the first one. It says, given angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles, prove that angle 1 is congruent to angle 2. So First thing we already know, angle 1 and angle 2 are right angles. Okay, and then definition of a right angle tells us the measure of angle 1 is equal to what?
Measure of angle
45.
What's the measure
2.
of angle 1?
Oh,
90 degrees. What's the measure of angle 2?
90.
90 degrees. Okay, now, if the measure of angle 1 equals 90 and the measure of angle 2 equals 90, what property says if they equal the same thing, then they're equal to each other?
Reflexive.
No, reflexive says they're exactly the same, right? So it'd be like measure of angle 1 equals measure of angle 1. We use this a lot. It just looks a little different this time. Usually we say if A equals B and B equals C, then A equals C.
Symmetric. No.
Transitive, right? If two different things equal the same thing, then they're equal to each other, says transitive property, okay? So transitive property of equality. And then what says if two things are equal, they're also congruent?
The transitive property of congruency.
Not transitive property of congruence,
Property of congruency.
not symmetric property. We didn't switch anything. It's just the what of congruence? Definition of congruence, yes. Right, definition of congruence is just telling us if two things are equal, they're also congruent. Okay? Do you all want me to just at least give you the answers on these if we're not gonna like go over it? Okay, I'll walk through it just real quick for you. So we know angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical. Okay, step 2 is given to you that 1 and 2 are a linear pair, 2 and 3 are a linear pair. We know that by definition of a linear pair. Part 3, linear pair postulate, just tells you that you can add two things and set it equal to what measure? 180, right? So then we would know measure of angle 1 plus measure of angle 2 has to equal 180. Same thing for 2 and 3. They have to add together to equal 180. And then our congruent supplement theorem tells us that they're equal to each other. Okay. All right, last page. I'm going to walk through this first one kind of like I did the last one. I'll go through it pretty quick just so you have it. Angle 1 and angle 2 are a linear pair. Now, this is also, where else do we see 2 plus 3 equals 180? Where is that information at? In your what? Given. So, the reason for step 2 is also given to us. Okay? What do we know about two angles that form 180 degrees? What's that called?
Linear.
Linear pair, right? So this is the linear pair postulate. And then similar to last time, if they form a linear pair, then the two are equal. So that's congruent supplement. Wait, that was bad. Okay, last part, I'll go through just a little slower with you. All right, last part says, use the diagram to find the following. So example 1 asks me to find a pair. How many is a pair? 2. So I'm naming two different complementary angles. Okay, so what two angles together form a complementary angle?
EC,
You have to use 3 points.
EGC.
E,
GDC.
so EGC is the total angle, but I need the two that add to get that.
EGD.
So angle EGD is the first one. Plus what other angle?
EGC, no, DGC.
DGC. Right, everybody sees that here? EGD plus DGC. Give me my complementary angle. Okay? Now, what about a pair of supplementary angles? This could go a lot of different ways, right? Okay? Anybody have an idea? Let's start with BGA. So I like that. So BGA. So we named this angle right here. So what other angle would give you the supplement of that?
FGA? No,
No.
DGE.
EGB.
EGB. Now, that's not the only one. You also could have used AGF, right? This angle here would have worked as well. Okay, so any of those would be okay. All right, now, what about a pair of congruent angles? Hello. July 5th?
Did I not? No, really not.
Did she say? Yeah, we know this. 88, 90. Yes. Uh-huh. Bye. Okay. We don't know for sure. What did you say? EGC and what?
CGA.
Okay. That I could agree with. But what other ones do we know for sure?
EGD.
What do we know about these two angles right here? This one and this one? They're congruent because they're vertical, right? So BGA, and what angle is across from BGA? This angle here. What's that angle? EGF. Now, the reason I want you to use those is because we're about to try to find X and Y. Which one do I have to find first? X, okay? So, what do I know about this angle and this angle together? So, what should I do with all of this? Come on, we're killing it. X minus 17 plus 3x plus 1 is equal to 180. I'm moving quick just for time's sake, okay? We get 4x minus 16 is equal to 180. We're all okay with that right now, yes? Okay. We add 16. We get 4x is equal to 196. So x is equal to 49. Now, in order to be able to find y, couldn't I just find the measure of this angle BGA? Yes. What's 49 minus 17?
32.
So what's the measure of y?
32.
Also 32. Okay? All right.